ordered Confederate prisoners to clear the minefields by any means necessary. Even
Hey, I agree. I see nothing wrong here. Armchair Historian has just uploaded. I was going to react to something else, but I saw that he just uploaded an interesting topic, so I'm going to react to it. Let's get in it.
It is November of 1864. William Tecumseh Sherman, restless and vigilant, watches as the railroad depot illuminates what little is left of the Atlanta skyline. After a costly siege for the city had been won in September, Sherman was gathering all the supplies he could to move onward to Savannah, splitting Georgia and thereby the Confederacy in two. To aid in this, the Union Army had to vacate Atlanta, stripping it of any military worth. For Atlanta's people, it was a devastating loss. For Sherman, it was just the beginning. As the American Civil War entered its fourth year, the Union's high command was becoming increasingly desperate to end the conflict.
Bro. I've heard of Sherman's march. Bro, Sherman was crazy. Alright? I know most of my audience are Americans. If you know anything about American Civil War history, I've heard of him. Sherman was crazy, fam.
A grinding stalemate between Generals Ulysses S. Grant and Robert E. Lee in Virginia made prolonging the war unpopular, and the November elections loomed on the horizon. Amid this—
Okay, I'm glad that he brought this up, bro. I've argued with people that in wartime, America can have elections, because for some reason I see so many people saying that, when it's wartime, America can't have elections. And I'm like, what? No, like that's so wrong. Like, I don't know why this myth is so persistent, but literally in the middle of the United States Civil War, there was literally like elections, you know what I mean? But so many people for some reason say that, America can't have elections in the middle of war. It's so stupid. So I'm glad that he brought that up.
This backdrop, the Atlanta campaign of Brigadier General William Tecumseh Sherman would take place, culminating in the Battle of Jonesboro, where Confederate railway supply lines to Atlanta were cut, leading to Confederate Lieutenant General John Bell Hood evacuating the city and destroying rail cars full of ammunition in his trail. The Union occupation of Atlanta began on September 2nd, just 2 months before the presidential election, providing Abraham Lincoln a much-needed win. The newly promoted Major General Sherman set up his headquarters in the city, and the few remaining civilians were ordered to evacuate. Hoping to divert Union attention away from Georgia, the scattered Confederates coalesced around Hood to harass supply lines leading to Atlanta and wreak havoc in Tennessee. After multiple false starts in pursuing the runaway Hood and contention with his superiors on what to do next, Sherman sent a communication to Lincoln and Grant, detailing his plans and requesting permission to proceed, stating, "I propose we break up the road from Chattanooga and strike out with wagons for Milledgeville, Millen, and Savannah. Until we can repopulate Georgia, it is useless to occupy, but utter destruction of its roads, houses, and people will cripple their military resources. I can make the march and make Georgia howl." After much delay—
the infamous howl of Georgia, bro. And you know what? They kind of deserved it. I'm not even gonna lie. They kind of deserved it. Alright? Like, I've heard, like, this man, I don't know, Sherman was very interesting. He's a very interesting figure. Personally speaking, I don't think he had a moral compass, but I'm gonna wait and see, like, what he says, because it's only 2 minutes and 30 seconds into the video.
Liberation on November 2nd, Grant simply wrote back, "Go as you propose." Easy access to information is a huge asset to any leader.
This is gonna be a sponsor. I am poor. Alright? I don't have a donation thing set up. My channel is not monetized. I am poor. I say this in all of my reactions that I do. I am poor. I'm sorry. So there's no point in me looking at this sponsor, bro. So I'm just gonna skip.
Telegram, and more. Support our channel by clicking the link in the description below, download Opera for free, and experience the most efficient, dynamic, and intuitive web browser available. On the 11th, 3 days after Lincoln's re-election, Union soldiers started tearing up Atlanta's rail lines. By the 15th, Sherman's army prepared to make its fateful 225-mile march to the coastal city of Savannah. But first, he ordered all of Atlanta's industrial and commercial capacity destroyed, sparing only the city's churches and private homes. Despite this, many residential areas were caught up in the fires. By the time his army departed,
Yo, fam, bro. Oh my gosh, it's crazy to me how Atlanta was able to rebuild like after that, bro. Like, oof. I think I saw a picture of like the aftermath of what Atlanta looked like. Oh my gosh, dude, the city looked like it got freaking carpet bombed.
On the morning of the 16th, nearly 40% of the city was destroyed. With the major generals Henry Slocum at his left flank and Oliver Howard at his right, Sherman marched southeast toward Macon. Sherman's army, comprising 62,000 men, was predominantly infantry. Alongside this, there was a 5,000-strong cavalry division and 2,000 artillerymen equipped with 64 guns. Having obliterated their only supply route, these soldiers were now reliant on the resources of the Georgia countryside for sustenance throughout the entire 225-mile march.
Bro, how did they manage this? How in the world did they manage this? I mean, yes, they had nearby towns and whatnot, but 60,000 people? Dude, that's a lot of people. 60,000 people is a lot of people. For context, right? The population of my country, Barbados, is 280,000 people. Alright? So this is like what? This is like 1/6 of the population of Barbados. I don't know, my math is terrible, right? But still, this is a lot of people. Okay? That 60,000 people is no joke. Like to us, we might think that, oh yeah, that's a very small amount of people, but like no, when you actually like you know, go around like 60,000 people, okay, yeah, that's a lot of people.
Foraging units were dispatched to villages along their route to gather as much food as they could, with specific instructions to avoid burglarizing civilian homes. They were directed to focus on acquiring supplies from wealthier residents. In reality, these foragers saw nothing more than free real estate. In addition to the seizing of livestock, meat, and grains, Union foragers ransacked homes for valuables. Clothing, jewelry, wigs, anything that could be sold or shown off was pilfered.
Become the master of the air, the thunder of the seas, or a tank fury.
Yeah.
A multiplayer action game.
Some Southern families opted to bury their possessions, often for their slaves to lead soldiers to them. Confederate defenses against Union...
Well deserved. Well deserved, to be honest. Although Sherman didn't really give a damn about slavery, bro. It's crazy to me how slavery in the United States and the British Caribbean was different. Because by this point, freaking slavery was well over in Barbados for like 30 years, right? Because like the British had I mean, like, yes, they did participate in the slave trade, or should I say the British elites participated in the slave trade. But if you weren't a British elite, you most likely didn't give a damn about slavery, or you were hell-bent on slavery. Most British people were appalled by slavery. In fact, the influx of British immigrants that came from Britain, that emigrated towards the north in the United States, actually led the US to have a much more anti-slavery sentiment in the north, because many British immigrants were migrating there as well. But yeah, like it's so crazy how vastly different like slavery in the Caribbean, the British Caribbean, and freaking the United States was, dude. Like, oh my goodness. Like, I was talking with my older brother about that like a while ago, fam, and we were like, oh yeah, man, if I had to go back in time, I would rather be a slave in the British Caribbean, specifically Barbados, right? There's this running joke in well, I wouldn't really say this is a joke, but there's this like running, I don't know, a lot of people who feel jealous towards Barbados because Barbados is a high income, very nice country. I'm not saying that because I'm from there. It's true, you can Google it. But there's this joke that, Barbadians, like, we still have our slave mentality because, I don't know why they say that. I guess it's because we're the most British Caribbean island. I don't know. But there's this saying that I saw someone say that other Caribbean people use, like, oh, the good slaves go to Jamaica. No. The bad slaves go to Jamaica, and the good slaves go to Barbados, right? It's like, I don't know. I don't get why people freaking, like, think that we have a slave mentality. I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with, like, freaking keeping our heritage. Like, come on now. Like, most British people didn't even like slavery, but alright.
Pillagers were meager at best. Led by Lieutenant General William Hardy, a garrison of a few thousand militia at Macon gathered to meet Howard's Union forces, only to see their movements turn and head east of the town. It was a feint, and Hardy caught on quickly that Sherman was making his target ambiguous. Beyond this ragtag force at Macon, there were also roving gangs of cavalry, led by Major General Joseph Wheeler. These units were most effective at catching foragers in the act, and distributed summary executions to any captured Yankees. As Howard continued his feint around Macon, one of his accompanying cavalry regiments was ambushed by Wheelers, and then lured into a trap as they gave chase. 3 brigades of the Georgia militia were making their way through Griswoldville, just a couple miles east of Macon, where Wheeler's cavalry would leave their Union pursuers to deal with. While this skirmish did distract parts of Howard's column, superior federal numbers quickly overwhelmed the defenders, causing the Georgia militia to suffer disproportionate casualties. As the mounted foragers passed by the richer parts of northern Georgia, they took the initiative not only to ruin plantation property, but to free the slaves who worked on such property. To the average Southern aristocrat, those damned Yankees were marauders and thieves. For the men, women, and children held in bondage, they represented an opportunity for freedom.
Crazy thing though is that yes, they did free some slaves, but I heard that Sherman did not give a damn about slaves. So what he did was I think at one point the slaves were taking up too much logistics or something like that. So he basically just abandoned them, leaving them for the Confederate cavalry that was shadowing them. Yes, because even then, Confederate cavalry, I don't know the name for them, but they were horsemen who would search for escaped slaves throughout all of this. I think Sherman was getting shadowed, and when he just straight up just freaking threw those slaves that was following him underneath the bus, because they were taking up too much logistics, or I guess, and too much room. They were recaptured by those Confederates and re-enslaved. So yeah, there's more to the story than what is said here. Correct me if I'm wrong though.
Newly liberated slaves flocked to Union soldiers and followed them on their march, eventually
he's talking about that.
Numbering in the thousands. While a morally good deed, accommodating such a large group of people off of rations and foraging became a challenge, one that many of the officers on the march had opposing solutions to, one of which eventually ended in disaster. On the 23rd, Slocum's wing entered the state capital of Milledgeville, with the governor and state government fleeing. There, in the Capitol building, federal forces held a mock vote to repeal Georgia's secession to the Union. After seizing the political heart of Georgia without a shot being fired, Sherman decided to increase federal pressure against the Confederacy. In addition to more time for foraging, federal troops were given more free rein to target any infrastructure that could aid the South. Cotton gins, mills, and other centers of manufacturing were burned, shelled, or rammed. Even the mansion and personal plantation of former Governor Howell Cobbs was put to the torch, save for the...
Bro. Hey, he's right though. He's not mindlessly burning everything. He's burning the stuff that's fueling the South economy.
slaves' quarters. In addition, hundreds of miles of rail line were slowly and meticulously uprooted by federal forces, often with soldiers working in shifts using crowbars as they twisted lines into shapes that were often impossible to repair. As the columns began to close in on Savannah, Sherman's men were being more frequently inundated by Joseph Wheeler's Confederate skirmishers. Fed up with the harassment, Sherman's cavalry commander, Judson Kilpatrick, detached to pursue their base at Waynesboro. As Union cavalry broke through defensive lines and cut off Confederate access to Augusta, Wheeler was forced to withdraw from the town, severely diminishing his capacity to slow Sherman's onslaught. As the march progressed, the terrain
Bro had enough. Bro had enough, fam.
began to change as Union troops entered the low coastal plains of Georgia. Its low elevation was rich in swamplands and marshes, but not so much in plunder and forage, adding further pressure as more fugitive slaves followed the army. On the night of December 8th, one of Sherman's subordinates, Brigadier General Jefferson C. Davis, reached Ebenezer Creek, some 20 miles north of Savannah, where Army engineers prepared a pontoon bridge to allow safe passage. In what is probably the worst atrocity committed on the march,
Okay, yeah. Okay, he's gonna talk about it. He's gonna talk about basically what I just said just now. Okay, yeah. Okay, so my facts are straight.
Davis ordered his 14,000 men to cross the bridge over the next few hours, and at the last moment ordered the bridge to be cut and pulled back ashore, preventing the 600 fugitive slaves from crossing, effectively abandoning them on the west side of the creek, their fates left to the incoming Confederate cavalry. Many of these freedmen tried to swim across the icy water for safety, some of whom were aided by disparate Union soldiers, but many more were killed or captured by Wheeler's men.
Yo, that's some sad stuff. Oh, I'd skip this part.
Many of Davis's men objected to this decision, some quite fervently, including Major James Connolly, writing, "The idea of 500 or 600 black women, children, and old men being returned to slavery by such an infernal copperhead as Jeff C. Davis was entirely too much. I told his staff officers of what I thought of such an inhumane, barbarous proceeding." Despite complaints making it all the way up to Sherman, the culpable Brigadier General Davis kept his position due to the lack of experienced field commanders. However, such an act could not stand to be repeated, Sherman thought, and
Okay, so it wasn't Sherman that ordered that. Okay, it wasn't Sherman. I thought it was Sherman who ordered that, but it wasn't him. It was him. Okay, I learned something new today.
must be reconciled. This event would be the precipice for Special Field Order Number 15, an order made by Sherman to provide arable land for the now liberated slaves and their families. Considerably less compassionate was Sherman's solution to the use of enemy anti-personnel mines. Called torpedoes at the time, Sherman's men began encountering these devices as they approached within the final few miles to Savannah, which had a devastating, terrifying impact on Union morale. As his wits' end, and having seen firsthand the treatment of Union POWs by their captors, Sherman ordered Confederate prisoners to clear the minefields by any means necessary, even
Hey, I agree. I see nothing wrong here. I see nothing wrong here.
when they didn't know where these torpedoes were planted. Finally, on December 10th, Sherman's main force reached the outskirts of Savannah, where they encountered Confederate General Hardee. Hardee, with his 10,000 troops entrenched, had established fortifications that halted the advance of Sherman's main column. Now hundreds of miles into their journey, and hoping to get resupplied for a potential siege, Sherman sent a small contingency to take the coastal Fort McAllister, swiping away a small Confederate garrison on the 13th, and finally reaching the sea, thus allowing the US Navy to resupply the beleaguered forces. With a new supply route set up for the first time in over a month, Sherman sent terms to Hardee on the 17th, demanding the surrender of Savannah or face an overwhelming force. Given the impossible decision to either surrender or persist, Hardee chose neither. On the 20th, the Confederate garrison crossed the Savannah River and made its way north, forcing the city's mayor to present Sherman with the keys to the city himself.
That is crazy, bro. I was expecting some crazy battle. I guess not.
General Sherman had done the impossible. Without supply or communication from his fellow Northern comrades, entirely under his command, Sherman had brought Georgia to heel. His army paraded through the countryside, virtually unchallenged by Confederate resistance. Emboldened, the now historic figure sought to replicate this strategy up through the Carolinas, with the same commitment to the scorched earth tactics that subdued Georgia. Sherman was set to cut a bloody path all the way to meet Robert E. Lee in his rear flank. In 1865, Sherman would add the burning of Columbia, South Carolina, and the capture of Confederate General Joseph E. Johnston to his long list of accomplishments, in a campaign that...
God damn, this man is a menace. I almost said the N-word. I gotta keep it PG, can't have YouTube smiting me down.
would persist until the end of the war. All the while delivering what both his admirers and opponents would call his divine retribution. In total, it's estimated that Sherman's 37-day campaign did over $100 million in damages in 1864, which today is about $1 billion US, with the...
Okay, that's not crazy. That's not crazy. It's not really crazy at all, nah.
vast majority of that damage providing little benefit to the marauding army. Over 300 miles of railroad and countless pieces of southern infrastructure were trashed. Thousands of horses and cattle, as well as millions of pounds of food, were seized. The march effectively isolated General Lee from most of his remaining peers, and allowed Sherman to move north and threaten Lee's Army of Northern Virginia with encirclement. The march hammered in the first nail of the Confederate coffin, culminating in Lee's surrender on April 9, 1865. The reputation of these actions remain debated among historians and history enthusiasts to this day. But to truly get a grasp of the motivations behind the mayhem, one has to look at only the words of Sherman himself. Since the public mind has settled to the conclusion that the institution of slavery was so interwoven in our system that nothing but the interposition of war could have eradicated it, I believe that the war was worth all that it cost in life and treasure.
Hey, I can't disagree. Sherman was right. Sherman was right. I said what I said. Sherman was right. Okay? Check out these videos right here on the screen, fam. You know, if you like my reactions, check out my other reactions on my channel of history. I'm probably gonna be reacting to the American Revolutionary War next, by Kings and General. So yeah, check that out tomorrow as well. You know, if you want to subscribe. If you don't, you don't. But yeah, man, thanks for watching the video.